President Donald Trump is now on his way to Egypt after delivering what I think could only be described in tone as a triumphant speech at the Knesset in Israel this morning, hailing a new dawn in the Middle East. Let's go ahead and roll this first clip of Donald Trump's speech, during which he needled Netanyahu and his wife, Sarah Netanyahu, a little bit for going over what Trump expected the length of their speeches would be, and said he was going to be late to Egypt, but otherwise was lavishing praise on Netanyahu. And let's go ahead and roll, basically taking a victory lap on the peace deal. The hostages, of course, living hostages have been returned. Trump was greeted with a lot of cheers by people even who had been protesting Netanyahu in Israel. So he was definitely feeling himself. This is D0B.
And let me also convey my tremendous appreciation for all of the nations of the Arab and Muslim world that came together to press Hamas to set the hostages free and to send them home. We had a lot of help. We had a lot of help from a lot of people that you wouldn't suspect, and I want to thank them very much for that. It's an incredible triumph for Israel and the world to have all of these nations working together as partners in peace. And it's pretty unusual for you to see that, but it happened in this case. This was a very unusual point in time, a brilliant point in time. Generations from now, this will be remembered as the moment that everything began to change, and change very much for the better. Like the USA right now, it will be the golden age of Israel and the golden age of the Middle East. It's going to work together.
Okay, so he also said that Marco Rubio would go down as the greatest Secretary of State in history, as we mentioned earlier. And one of the points people have made throughout the war the last 2 years is that Netanyahu's incentive to end the war hinged, at least in some small part, on charges against him. Donald Trump weighed in on that as well. Let's go ahead and roll this clip.
I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon? Give him a pardon. By the way, that was not in the speech, as you probably know. But I happen to like this gentleman right over here, and it just seems to make so much sense. You know, whether we like it or not, this has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. This has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. And cigars and champagne, who the hell cares about that?
So Trump is now on his way to Egypt for a ceremony that Krystal and Sagar will surely cover tomorrow with Arab leaders. But before, Krystal, we get to that, I just want to get to what's happened in Gaza. Since I just want to mention this quote from Steve Bannon this morning. He said, the president, reacting to the speech, had his game face on when he showed up. Bibi clearly was icy. This is a catastrophic defeat for the Israel First crowd and Tel Aviv Levin. I think he's referring to Mark Levin there. I'm sure they're banging their heads on the wall. It's a catastrophic defeat because they overreached. They pushed this Greater Israel project and it came crashing down around them. Now, I have seen a dynamic like that between Trump and Netanyahu before, where you can tell that in his Trumpian way, he's in public trying to needle Netanyahu. I think there was a little bit of that with the length of the speech this morning, but I actually, Krystal, don't see that Trump feels this is a catastrophic defeat for the, quote, Israel First crowd and Tel Aviv Levin. I feel like he's of the impression that everyone is really happy with him.
Yeah, that is definitely...
I mean, the reception he got at the Knesset was... praiseworthy.
Yes. Jeremy Scahill tweeted, the scene in the Knesset with Trump is like watching the inverse of a war crimes tribunal. The leaders and facilitators of the Gaza genocide are congratulating each other and applauding their crimes. And I think that's well said. And look, there's so much to say about this. Number one, this deal was always available. Always. All it took was an American president, whether it was Biden or Trump, saying, we're done. You're done. We're done. This is ending. Very similar deal has been on the table from Hamas from the early phases of the war. So let's be clear about what has been done to these people over 2 years' time. And we'll show you the homes that they're returning to, which in many cases are just simply rubble. The amount of death and destruction and disease and horror that has been enabled now by two successive American administrations is something that none of us should ever forgive. And there remain a lot of questions about what exactly happens going forward, because it's very possible that we look back on this speech as a sort of mission accomplished moment for Trump. he will have to, again, assert himself in order for anything, for the ceasefire just to be maintained. You already have Netanyahu and the president of Israel indicating that they're not done, that they want to go back in once they've gotten their hostages, their captives back. So just to maintain the ceasefire is going to continue to take presidential will. And certainly any sort of rebuilding, reconstruction, anything that even approaches looking like peace or justice will require intensive attention from this president. And the initial, 20 or 22 point plan or whatever it is that he laid out, which envisioned him running a board alongside Tony Blair, does not even come close to approximating anything like justice or peace, which is what is required in order to actually have coexistence, and an end to the cycle of violence that has gone on for years and years and years. We are a long, long way away from that. But, thank God that the people in Palestine, that people in Gaza are today able to live, able to eat, able to survive on to those next battles. I think, we have to live in that duality of this is a horrible deal. There is nothing good that is on the table for Gaza coming forward. President Trump certainly doesn't care about their humanity. And also that it is it's just, watching these little kids with joy on their face that they're able to, get some food and be able to go back to whatever remains of where they're from. It's been, I think, it's been a lot emotionally.
So, these videos that we're about to show everyone are incredible in a lot of different ways. And incredible, you look at the just utter abject devastation, and then incredible when you look at people immediately rebuilding. When you look at people,
the resilience is I can't even imagine it.
The
I just
tears,
cannot imagine it.
It's just, yeah, it's one of the things I've seen that just one of those moments that makes you realize how siloed we are and living in different universes you are. It's that I've seen some people on the right saying, why are none of the ceasefire now, why is none of the ceasefire now crowd celebrating the end of the war? And there's two things. On the one hand, I actually have seen a lot of people celebrating how beautiful it is to see videos coming out of Gaza where people realize that they are not under fire literally every single day. I've seen plenty of that. So it's there. It's obviously there. And on the other hand, it's well, how much of that can you do when there are also so many tripwires in this potential peace plan that is so obviously so fragile. So
yeah.
There's two things happening right there, but also it's impossible. It's impossible. It would be impossible for anyone not to watch these kids dancing and celebrating, realizing that they're not literally having to try to just survive every single day anymore. Yeah,
and I think the other piece of that is it feels very hard to celebrate something when you see people returning to just rubble. When that we'll cover this, the one, wastewater treatment plant in Gaza City has been destroyed. So there's just no sanitation, no civilian infrastructure, no schools, no mosques, the hospitals have been hit. It's hard to celebrate, 2 years of utter destruction and horror and the knowledge that lives are going to continue to be difficult, even as we are definitely relieved that the immediate, assault is at least by and large over, at least for now. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these images, and I think that'll encapsulate better than my words could what this actually looks like. If we can put this up on the screen, guys, and I'll explain. You can see these are people, returning to what remains and along the road. And this is what it looks like. This is what remains. It's just an unbelievable scene of devastation. And if you're still telling me this was self-defense, that Hamas was in all of these buildings, residential buildings, markets, bakeries, everything, then I don't know. You're insane if you still are believing that line. And here we've got body bags lined up. This is an inspirational one. This guy returns to his bombed out apartment and sets to work right away, putting it back together. This woman, same thing, clearing out the rubble, trying to reclaim some sense of, normal life and dignity. And that's what I was saying. Just the amount of resilience, these are some absolutely extraordinary people. You can see the earth movers here, cleaning out the rubble, trying to make the roads more, accessible for people. Here we have Palestinian twins who are reunited, who are just embracing each other, tearfully hugging, just overjoyed to be able to see each other again. There was a video, we didn't include in the montage, but one that really particularly got me because I love cats, of a little boy holding his little kitty, Simba, who happens to look exactly like my cat, Salem, that many will have seen.
I thought that.
Yeah, big boy. He was a big boy like Salem.
Yeah.
And he's holding him. He's like, Simba and I are going to get to go back and we're going to get to play together and like just, live life. And it's what
Normal
we have
kid
robbed.
stuff.
I mean, we have robbed 2 years of the children who managed to survive. We have robbed them of 2 years of their childhood. I mean, just endless trauma and suffering and, lack of food and lack of medical care, the largest amputee population of children in the world, the family members that have been lost. You cannot possibly imagine what these little kids have been through, what they have seen and experienced, things that most of us, that no human should ever have to, and that most of us will never see in an entire lifetime.
The kids, it's just normal kid stuff, like playing with your cat, being excited to play with your cat because you don't have to worry about the incredible, this is the other thing. It's like these kids, if you're 5 years old, I mean, so much of your life has been consumed in these formative years by
this is all you know.
A raging war. Yeah, it's all you know. So this is a generation. And the very reason that some people on the Israeli far right and the American far right are unhappy with this deal is the very reason that continuing the war all along without other plans was, it just, the idea that Hamas has been eradicated. It's the exact same reason why the Israeli far right is upset about the deal, because they're like, well, Hamas will just reconstitute. And it's like, well, yep.
Some of us have been saying from the beginning.
Yep. And these
this
people,
was never a goal that was achievable and would just be used for immiserating the entire population.
And these kids, none of whom did anything wrong. They're 5, they're 6. They now have a situation where Hamas is probably in the long term going to be, Hamas or whatever comes after Hamas is going to be more powerful. And these little kids grow up in that world. Not only do they grow up in the world where they were raised in these years of abject destruction, literal rubble and starvation, but then their future is actually probably darker in the long run. I just don't see any other way. I think I'm really hopeful. I think this is the best version of, it's probably, well, Tony Blair aside, but like just actually having the framework of a deal. I don't think Joe Biden could have done it. I don't think Kamala Harris could have done it. I don't love.
Well, they could have.
Well, they could have done a lot of things.
It was not hard to achieve. What changed is
the politics.
Yeah, I genuinely believe. I don't even think it was the politics. Ryan said this, and I think this is right. Israel bombed Trump's money in Qatar. Like they bombed Qatar, and they came to Trump and were like, these people are out of control. Like you are invested. Like you are making money here, and they're bombing that. And they failed. They were trying to kill the Palestinian negotiators, and they failed. So Israel was trying to make it impossible to, have any sort of negotiation in the near term. Now, there would have been new negotiators and down the line, et cetera, but that's what they were trying to achieve. They failed to achieve that, and they pissed off Trump by threatening what he cares about most, which is his money. And I think that's what changed the dynamics. But it was not hard to achieve this deal. All he had to do was decide, no, you're done. And, and that's the risk is there is no doubt. We could put D3 up on the screen. Like, there's no doubt. Netanyahu has said that he says we've achieved tremendous victories. The campaign is not over. Part of our enemies are trying to recover. Like when they see Hamas back in operation, which is already starting to happen, he's going to be making a push for, to break the ceasefire and to pull out of this deal and to go forward with the new military operation. The president of Israel has said, we got to go in and blow up the tunnels. Blowing up the tunnels has always been an excuse to murder a bunch of civilians. So they're going to be pushing, and it will require Trump to hold firm and say, no, I said the war's over. You're not doing this. I'm not supporting it. We're done here. That's what will be required.
Well, and again, for business reasons, I actually think, and it gives me no pleasure to say, but for business reasons, I actually think there's an argument that Trump is more likely to hold firm than another American politician would. And again, I don't think that's the ideal situation at all. But I do think that Trump sending his son-in-law, who has all kinds of business interests in the region, Steve Witkoff, who previously has done all kinds of business deals in the region, his friend, basically plucked out of New York real estate world and put into these deals. I mean, I think that is the way Trump realized a lot of the Arab world is going to trust your deals.
That's the best hope.
The best hope, right?
Is that he sees it in his financial interest
because they've
to maintain the deal.
And in some respects, like they have been screwed by like neoliberal Western deal making over the last half century. So like there's all kinds of stuff that's going on here. But all that is to say, as long as the war is over right now and these kids are going back to their lives, I mean, yes, that's great. That's wonderful. It's just the long-term situation. I don't know anybody other than maybe Trump and his closest deputies who feel a lot better about the long-term situation. Because, I mean, maybe I'm hopeful. I like that's the best we can have is hope and optimism in any situation. Of course, it's just hard because it does look like Hamas is already reconstituting, and long-term solution is elusive.
Some more good news, though. We can put D4 up on the screen. GHF, the Gaza quote-unquote humanitarian foundation, done, wrapped up operations. This is one of those quote-unquote aid sites that have been constructed with those, big earthen mounds. And, these were the sites of, outside of these sites, these regular aid massacres were occurring. Some Palestinian journalists have gone in and found some of the signs of that, the spent shells and whatnot outside of these aid sites. And there's a tacit admission in here that, number one, GHF was never necessary. Number two, it was, in fact, this was obvious to all of us, but it was, in fact, Israel that was blocking aid from coming in. And now you have, UN trucks and additional aid trucks beginning to flow into the Gaza Strip. There is an overwhelming need for all sorts of things, but, you continue to have, I actually just saw yesterday, one of the girls that had become known in a lot of Western media as a 12-year-old girl just died of starvation. So the need continues because once your body gets to that point, you require not just food of any sort, but you require specific, specialized medical care and nutritional supplements. And so hopefully some of that is coming in as well. But, clearly it was always Israel blocking the amount of aid that needed to come in from coming in. And now that those blocks are lifting or easing, a lot more aid is flowing in, which is another really great thing to see. Let me put this next piece up. I'm not sure where this stands right now, D5. There were early indications that these two Palestinian doctors were not going to be released. Then I saw some indications that there were still negotiations going on and maybe they were going to be released. So that one is still a question mark for us to keep an eye on. D6 is what I referenced before. This is President Israel Katz saying Israel's great challenge after the phase of returning the hostages will be the destruction of all of Hamas's terror tunnels in Gaza directly by the IDF and through the international mechanism to be established under the leadership and supervision of the U.S. Primary significance of implementing the agreed upon principle of demilitarizing Gaza and neutralizing Hamas of its weapons. I've instructed the IDF to prepare for carrying out that mission. So, using this as a way to say, oh, well, we have to continue to operate because we have to destroy these terror tunnels. Look, you guys saw the images of Gaza at this point. If you didn't get the freaking tunnels at this point, I don't know what you've been doing because there is like nothing left in the Gaza Strip. And then great reporting here from Drop Site about how on their way out, Israeli soldiers made a point of torching food, homes. They also torched a critical sewage treatment plant, the last remaining really even semi-functional wastewater treatment plant in Gaza City, which of course was the main city inside of Gaza. We've got a bunch of images of this. And this was, they were doing this, they were celebrating it, they were posting it. They were leaving these fake Airbnb type reviews. And here they are torching that wastewater treatment facility, which obviously is really critically important for maintaining the sanitation and health of the population there. So, not content with what they'd already done, they had to torch everything they could on their way out as well. And then this last piece, let me go ahead and put D8 up on the screen. So there are these armed gangs that were backed by Israel, ISIS-linked, by the way, armed Palestinian gangs that were backed by Israel. And, now Israel's like basically abandoned them to their fate. And you won't be surprised that there's a lot of Hamas taking retribution on them for their collaboration with the enemy in the context of this genocide. There's also some indications that those armed gangs continue to operate and continue to, kill and harm Palestinians. So there's going to be this, low-level fighting. Actually, Trump was asked about this, about some of these images of Hamas, settling scores with these armed gangs and whatever. And he was like, yeah, they're allowed to do it for a time, basically. So
he's just like what we were saying earlier. Like it's amazing to watch people go home and realize that they're not in survival mode every single day. To the extent that people aren't right now, as you mentioned, some people still are at risk of starvation. But to the extent that people are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, it's completely understandable. But it's hard to have long-term hope. Last thing I'll say, Krystal, is my God, the hostage families, what they've been through the last 2 years, it's just unthinkable. So hopefully some relief for them. I think, I forget the exact number, but mostly we're talking about bodies that have been returned. So just hopefully this is closure of a chapter and relief for all of the suffering those people have been through. I mean, they've been, we've covered them a number of times. They've been really brave to stand up politically in the war-torn, or in the middle of wartime, to the leader of the country under certain circumstances. So it's just been unimaginable couple of years for the hostage families. Yeah,
it was interesting at the rally that Witkoff and Jared Kushner spoke at. First of all, Kushner was like, you met the moment with, what did he say? Like, it was incredible and your values and blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, we're looking at the pictures of the rubble. Witkoff tried to talk about Netanyahu and couldn't get his words out because Netanyahu was getting booed so aggressively by the audience there. I wanted to update, Ryan just posted that one of those doctors that I mentioned before is on the list of the hostages to be released by the Palestinian hostages to be released by the Israelis. And then one final note, one of the individuals killed by those ISIS-linked Israeli-backed gangs was a notable journalist who, it's just so heartbreaking. Saleh Jafrawi, I'm sure I'm butchering that name, I'm sorry guys, but he was kidnapped by gunmen working with the Israeli army, and so he made it through all of these 2 years of genocide only to be killed by these Israeli-backed gangs at the end. So there you go.
It's just a mess, obviously, and just the victory lap juxtaposed with all of that. Yeah, it's a sight.
It's a lot.
For sure.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.